Uganda is one of the countries in East Africa with good labor laws. However, as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, President Yoweri Museveni declared a total lockdown. This led to the closure of all industries, leaving only essential services in operation. Trade unions and employer organizations were left with the challenge due to the absence of public transport. As the restrictions are being eased and business slowly returning to normal, what is the role of employers' organization in ensuring that workplaces remain safe? How can trade unions enforce collective bargaining agreements? To discuss the employment relations in Uganda and much more, we have Christopher Werihe, Secretary General NOTU, and Douglas Opio, Executive Director, Federation of Uganda Employers. I'm your host, Patrick Amara, and I welcome you all to this discussion. Mr. Douglas Opio and Mr. Christopher Werihe, we thank you very much for joining us on this discussion. We are very much honored. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
I don't know whom I should begin with, because all of you are very important when it comes to the world of work. I think I should begin with Christopher Werihe, because I can imagine now the situation we are in now. Employers are also perplexed. What do we do? Because you are maybe running a business and the business is not making money, and yet you have people you've been working with for donkey years, and you have the pain of some of them letting them go or even cutting their salary, and perhaps some of them will not even understand why you are cutting them, because they are not maybe they do not know the income and the expenditure of the business you are running. What kind of calls and what kind of messages or what kind of discussions are you having with the likes of us? I'm saying the employees who are perhaps in distress today.
Thank you, Patrick. First of all, what I could say is what happened to COVID-19 was an accident. And when this accident comes, you know, it's something not you are prepared for. You try to find out how to get into it. So we all of a sudden close instantly, but somehow survival must be there. And that's why there was room for essential people to move on, frontline people like the doctors had to work on, and structured people moving. So definitely it has not been easy, but it has been life of catching up. And I think this 80 days, we are trying to normalize.
I just want to imagine that your office must have been made very busy in the last couple of months because of people who find themselves in distress. Maybe they have lost work and they are coming to you. They want to know what next. Paint a picture for us of how the situation is for the employees of Uganda.
Patrick, at the time of announcement of 20th, and say no airline is moving, no border moving, nobody going to hotel, it was really bad. It was really bad. Everybody was on the street crying, what's next? But I want to say thank the employers that the really first hit of the month, they were able to give them something. They were to give them something, those who are in the formal sector, and they moved on, except when the lockdown went on being extended, is now when the situation kept changing. But the employers, majority of remained responsiveness. Of course, the extreme we had was hotels. The extreme we had was horticulture. The extreme we had was transport. Really, it was extreme. And we were able to have time to discuss and say, please hold on. And what did we do get out of government is also to come out with guidelines of saying, please don't terminate people's contract.
Douglas, it must be a very tough decision for an employer, you know, to tell your employee that maybe you don't have to come tomorrow because I don't have what to pay. Or even to say, you know what, at the end of the month, I'm going to pay you half of the salary or even a quarter. Or if you can, maybe you just come and volunteer. These are people some of us just live on a month's paycheck, because if you don't have that paycheck, you are totally vulnerable. Yeah. I wonder how that discussion was being held between the employee and the employer, and how now you are continuing that discussion, because we are not very clear where this pandemic is taking the world.
Yeah, right from the beginning, as the Federation of Uganda Employers, we came together, like Peter insinuated a bit, together with the government, right at the beginning of the crisis. And thanks to Honorable Minister Frank Tumembaze, we convened and discussed from an employment relations point to see exactly what we could potentially do. So we issued a joint press statement, and within that press statement we provided some guidance to both employers and the workers. And the guidelines were mainly around how do we manage the existing employment contracts. Now, at that time when the situation had just started, nobody expected it to be more than 2 months as it is at the moment. So at that time, we were mainly advising employers, rather than take the hard decision already straight away, you could probably utilize leave, the annual leave days for your workers, and then the law provides for 21, but some employers, of course, give much more than 21, but the 21 are working days. So meaning if you work Monday to Friday, that is basically a month. So the first month was basically utilization of annual leave. But when it comes to the second month now, that's where a lot more discussion had to be done. In some cases, some employers could still afford to pay, but maybe not full salary, maybe reduced salary, basically a pay cut. But also, in some cases, some of our businesses are not well prepared. As you know, our economy is nearly 90% small and medium enterprise, informal. So basically, they are just a replica of our peasant farmers. They also live hand to mouth. So if a business makes money within a given month, that is the same money used to meet the expenses. So that means even a lockdown for a week, people don't have money to pay. Can take you down, basically.
So in other words, is there anything the employers, the organization, companies and corporations should learn from COVID-19 in terms of running businesses that are solid, that are standard, that if you get that kind of shock, you're not going to go under in just 6 months? Are they picking any lessons?
Yeah, and from, for the employers, the major lesson is risk management, mitigation of risk. A lot of our businesses assume that business will always be there. Tomorrow I will wake up, I will get more customers and transport them to Kabul, I will make my money. So that hand-to-mouth way of doing business is no longer feasible. So you have to have a risk management system in place. You basically have to have a business continuity plan. Should there be a crisis, what exactly am I going to do? Should there be a sharp drop in my income, how will I manage the process?
So, Mr. Werike, business continuity plan is what I'm going to pick from Douglas, because that's very important to know how you can continue. So in the organization, corporations, companies, whatever that we have, how much can they discuss with their employees that business continuity plan, even if it means to undergo some kind of shock therapy, so that they are even ready?
Patrick, the reason why we have these collective bargaining agreements, these agreements prescribe accidents and prescribe better things as you go on. So in the absence of organizations where there were no collective bargaining, where the trade union had not reached that level, we had a big extreme. And therefore, many employers started hiding under COVID to frustrate the workers. And I think you saw some of them, like New Vision, at that level. You see guys says, I'm now just cutting because of COVID. 1 single 3 months, you cannot cry. But within this, I know suddenly that where we shall go, we need to improve again on our collective bargaining. That's the lesson we're learning.
You know, Douglas has just said our businesses, our companies are a mirror of our peasant economy. Even them, they are running them like we're running our peasant informal kind of economy. Almost them also are surviving on a paycheck of a month. Should you miss that paycheck, the business can go under. There are very few businesses in town that can continue paying their employees, even if they're in distress, maybe for 2 or 3 months or more. But the majority will just collapse even within that 1 month. So but I'm asking whether Douglas and you, Warike, whether they have been able to learn a thing or two on having that business continuity plan that can withstand the shocks that have been coming.
Yes, within employer and us, we've had to agree on this, that some of the people could take leave, and that's what we said.
Okay.
We did not rise up and say, oh, this is a violation. Some of you could take leave. Those which had longer extreme, you could even go on without pay. But what does it mean? That when business resumed, your period will be included in your benefits. So you can now see how we're trying to live in this kind of situation. We understand that this small business, which is hand to mouth, is the only one we need to survive. So therefore, you don't need to squeeze water out of the stone. And that is how we have been surviving in this up to now, where business starting. And in most cases, like you will see hotels, they did what they could do. Transport, they have done what they can do. But we know that once you are not off, you see the beauty we've had from the employers is not to announce that I have now chased you. That will be the very, very extreme.
But Douglas, I have a problem with the Employers Federation, because really, if you go around the whole country, the kind of payment you give to us, in most cases, is really very meager. Because good payment, good salary, in my view, should be the salary that can provide me something to eat, that can provide me something to save, and can provide me something to invest. If my salary is not giving me those three things, then that salary really is just like a daily wage. I should get off something to eat on my salary. I should be able to get something to save. And I should be able to get something to invest. But that does not happen in most cases because we're getting meager. And Warike should be fighting for us on this one.
You know, we have had an extensive discussion in this area. Actually, we have had a discussion on the minimum wage. What you are putting across is higher than the minimum wage. I'm
trying to explain, because that's the only way how you can, because you have to eat, and probably you have to save for the bad day, and maybe you have to plant for something to germinate.
Basically, what you're trying to put across is a living wage, which is way above the minimum wage. Now, every employer would want to pay the best salary to the workers. Essentially, we say if you pretend to pay, the workers pretend to work. So essentially, at the end of the day, the employer loses, but also the employees lose.
No, Douglas. There's a return when you pay well. You have to look for the best skill. You have to go for the best worker, find the best way of retaining them, pay them well, and you'll see the dividends in an organization. I think that's pretty obvious.
I agree. Let me first put this way. The employers who are already there, trying to maximize labor productivity, paying well, the minimum wage and this living wage are not discussions anymore. But the companies that have reached that level, there are very few. So the general level of labor productivity is quite low. It cannot sustain.
What brings that? Why does everybody say the general productivity is very low? Why? Because I have a managing director, I have a general manager whose job is to ensure that the books are good, the money is coming in. You're always on your toes to make sure the people are working. Are they the ones responsible for poor production?
Now, labor productivity is a function of many things. One is the skills of the worker themselves, and you have had the discussion we have been having extensively. In the skills area alone, we are talking about skilling Uganda because we recognize there is a skills gap. We don't have the right qualified people whom we desire. We are talking about, for instance, the hotel sector. We are talking about the banks. If you just a handful of the managers are actually local people, most of them are foreign. So there is a skills gap, not just at the very high level, the CEOs, basically the C-level kind of class, the management executives, but also on the lower end. The competencies, we have been talking about oil that has recently been discovered, but we are just setting up the school to try and take advantage of the opportunities. We were talking about just certified welders who are saying we can't even raise 1,000 of them, and yet we are talking about unemployment. So that's one, is the question of skills. Secondly, the question of capitalization. In Uganda, the cost of capital is way too high for an employer to make meaningful investment, to get the right machinery, to be able to get the workplace in order and all these things. They borrow at a commercial rate. They borrow more than 20% interest rate. Now, no business makes even 10% net profit in a given year. So because of that, it's very difficult for the employer to pay highly. They all the time they're struggling to survive. They, if you're a manufacturer, you have to buy second-hand equipment, breaking down all the time, giving you a lot of cost. So there are a lot of things that are still causing our productivity to be low.
Okay, I think, Douglas, you raised two very important things. The skills gap and also maybe the cost of money, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But now the skills gap, if I may come to you, Christopher, looks like everybody has talked about there's something lacking in our skills. We have increasing universities and institutions and all these what. Why is it, and when a Ugandan worker goes abroad, they are so shining. You see them in South Africa, in Botswana, in Namibia, in Kenya, in Rwanda. They're doing, how come in our own country, when we're working here, that's when there's a deficit of skills?
You see, sometimes I would say that employers try so much to get a reason of not giving people the right amount of money. I will actually start from my government, where up to now they are not giving minimum wage. Because if there would be a minimum wage, you would then say, okay, you have something with you, now let's talk about the skill gaps. And this is where the trade union is still shouting, said, look, while you are saying about that, why don't you give me the right thing? Give me my minimum wage, where I will start with my minimum. Then the skills will take me another mile. Yes, I am aware that we may be having issues of skills, but we are not importing them. The production is still going on. The only thing is we have that mismatch, and today we have now added in scientists. You'll see when you look at...
But did you hear there was this kind of research in East Africa? I don't want to believe it, but it said that you need 6 Ugandans to do one job by a Kenyan, and that thing is really rubbed the wrong way.
That has never been correct.
No.
Yep.
That,
Well, I remember reading this thing about 4 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, people quote the so famous World Bank research,
yes,
actually. But it's not correct statistics.
But if this is World Bank, World Bank, who am I to come and...
made that story based on one sector.
Yeah.
And that was mainly the hotels, yes. So how do you say that one sector, we're having multiple sectors here? There's communication, there's water, there's electricity. Now how do you say, because you are serving in the hotel, we now qualify for people to say, yeah, more...
But if we even stay in the hospitality industry, I wonder how Kenya overtook us, because in the 60s and 70s, Uganda was the hub of teaching hospitality in East Africa, and people were even taking them...
Kenya has done well, because they have kept the Utali going on, which Uganda has just left the cycle move the way it said. This is what Douglas now coming and said, the skills, instead of us having much together with what we have in Ginger, in Crescent Crane. Government failed to improve on that. So we would not be complaining, we would be still marching. Because by the time when East African community was collapsing, Utali was there. Now Crescent Crane was there. Why is it that government did not think about it and now want to transfer the blames on people who can catch up with learning? I would only agree if Ugandans were slow in learning. I would agree on that. But we have not been tried. And sometimes I would say there's been some bit of negligence within ourselves.
I don't think so. I don't think Ugandan workers are not any better than what. I think they are competent enough, they have
Yeah,
the skills.
yes.
I think if you identify talent and you pay them well and you retain them well, they can do wonders. I can see many organizations around the world, and when you see Ugandans working in there, they just stand out from the crowd.
Yeah,
and there are so many examples, from South Africa to the United Kingdom to the United States, where a Ugandan is working and is standing out of the crowd. But you talk about the cost of money.
Yeah.
Now that the government, in the State of the Nation address just a few days ago, the president was talking about putting 1 trillion shillings in Uganda Development Bank and 100 billion Uganda shillings in Uganda Development Corporation. I think that should be coming like sweet music to your ears.
Extremely sweet music. Because that's what we have been asking for a very long time. And I'm still waiting to see the level of the interest rate and the duration which the employer will need to pay back that money. But capital anywhere on earth is the single biggest driver of growth. You can't talk about development without capital. Just forget about it. And capital, you can't accumulate enough at a personal level. If you're going to sell your shop down here in Chikubo, how long will you take to build a factory to begin making your own shoes? You will simply not graduate from that. You'll be a shopkeeper for good, because the level of investment required for you to transition into a local manufacturer, you'll never be able to afford it. But if you have capital from the government, you can pay it even over a period of 30 years. If, God forbid, you passed on, even the generations after you will pay that loan, and the business will continue to grow.
How
so
do you reconcile the fact that in the same country in Uganda, we have private businesses that are actually very robust, that are running so well, and there are centers of excellency, and they have been able even to pay their workers maybe 1 or 2 months or 3 months, even during this pandemic, and they are moving on. We're working in the same economy, the same environment, the same workforce almost.
The first, we have to distinguish 2 businesses that are thriving at the moment. There are also those that are foreign owned, so essentially foreign direct investment. And back home, they have development banks. So essentially, they have Exim banks, the export-import banks. So essentially promoting their companies to go into other markets. They are supported. You're given special money to launch in your business in Uganda. So there is that category. They are not affected by what we are discussing now. Now, there are local manufacturers who are doing well, but some of them have a history around it. They started this business in olden days, and they're mostly people of Indian origin, I should tell you, who again had preliminary benefits from where they originated from, and they started those businesses.
I don't think the benefits are really to do from where they came from. I think it is the attitude. I think it's the business acumen. I think it is the discipline of doing business, but also teaching their people. Because you may find a business, a family-run business for generations, and from grandfather to the son to the grandchild, everybody is taught, and everybody has a sense of discipline to do business.
I agree.
Even they are not getting any support from their home countries.
I agree.
But the ingenuity within the family.
Now, what you're saying, what you're explaining is the levels of development, and now levels of development comes with many things, not just the capital investment. A business that has been running for generations, the systems they have built over the years, you can't compare it with somebody who is just, that's why history is important. But we also have excellent local businesses here, the Mulwanas, the Bitature, doing excellent business. But the route they have taken, which I've seen very productive, for instance, Bitature, partnership with global brands, the Protea brands, for instance, that allows them to tap into the management skills which may not be available in our economy.
But I remember that some of the examples you're picking about 2 years ago, they're the same people who were asking for some kind of a bailout.
Yeah, because, like I'm explaining.
So then that sort of challenges their credibility.
Not
in terms
at all.
Of running business.
Not at all. Every business, no business is too big to fail. You have heard even during the credit crunch of 2008, big financial institutions in the US were asking for government bailout. Now these are businesses that are more than 100 years old. So you can't blame a particular businessman for some short-term failures. It happens for all businesses, so I wouldn't want to measure them simply on those.
Patrick, I'll take you back on the issue of this good music of the loan which is being provided for.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are said very good, but where do you get access from? That's where our Ugandans are disadvantaged. Today you will see people speaking that these borders don't belong to people. They belong to one person. You can now see this unfairness in the process. So this money will sound nice, but not every Ugandan will be able to get into it there.
Like
and therefore,
are you talking about the money that maybe is in Uganda Development Bank?
yes, and because that's the story I'm now telling you. Just here, one guy is managing the border of Kampala, and yet for us who have been thinking these borders just go to the bank, pick a loan, and begin servicing on their own. But now I've turned out to say no, these guys belong to one person.
So the idea is, because I'm sure Parliament will be discussing that. Parliament is the one to finally make the appropriation. So through the relevant committees of Parliament and through your members of Parliament, you need to find out the mechanism, how that money can be given, because you'll get 2 or 5 rich men. They decide that they're going to start some industries. They can actually deplete that fund. And like that's what Mr. Werike is saying.
You know, I get the concern Mr. Werike is raising, but let's appreciate one thing. Not everybody can be an employer, especially an employer at a high level. These employers, when they get this money, they are not actually putting in their pocket. They're investing, and when they invest, that money gets into other pockets. The borders you're talking about, on their own, they wouldn't be having a border to ride. But because somebody invested the money, is able to have a border to ride. So it's important. And also, so we don't have to say because one big investor has taken the money, is not a problem at all. But what we hold them to account on is how many jobs can they create? What level of tax can they be able to pay? That way, there is a trickle-down effect of this money. But if we just decided to give each one of us small, we will remain the same way we are. If everybody just, you gave me my 1 million, you got your 1 million, you got your 1 million, end of story. We'll use that money to buy foreign goods, end of story. So investment is important. And giving this money to few individuals
people with business acumen,
with good, brilliant ideas, they can carry us forward. It's just like hiring one expert to manage this hotel, for instance, but keep the rest of the Ugandans in employment. Yeah, so it's about what can we do that has a greater good.
So in this pandemic, Christopher, there are people whose jobs are not going to come back at all. There are those these companies that are going to disappear. And there are those probably are going to get half pay or quarter pay, and maybe those are even lucky to get that half pay for some foreseeable future. I wonder what is the way forward and how can we recover from that?
I don't really agree with that statement. Why is, if you look into the present state of nation, when he says he will defer pay as you, and you see, those are the challenges which comes in the business. When you want to look for capital, you defer the payment and see how the worker can keep on going. And then sometimes, of course, employers would want to take this opportunity to change the name and say, I've wound up, when actually the same person has not wound up. Someone is just trying to hide into. So there's some bit of dishonesty sometimes.
But for example, I was speaking to.
But
just last week, I was speaking to the CEO of Great Lake Safaris, and the Great Lake Safaris, of course, they are running the Uganda lodges.
Yeah, sure.
And you can imagine now, although they have been able to pay their workers 1 month and second, I don't know whether the third as well, but you can imagine people who have been cancelling their bookings. You know, in the last 1 week or 2 weeks alone, they had lost about maybe $750,000. I don't know how much now they have lost in terms of those who are cancelling the bookings. And I can't imagine, I don't know when the pandemic is going to end, but even if it ends, people will be jittery to travel. the hospitality industry,
Yeah.
to travel across the world. But
Yeah.
even if you wanted to travel, even their countries have been hit hard. So yes, it is possible that the leisure and pleasure industry, hospitality industry, may not come, some of them may not come back, and others will come back so slowly. So that is going to be very painful, Mr.
It's very painful, but you're approaching it from an extreme end. And if you
I think it's better to look from the extreme end.
If you continue saying like
Yeah,
that,
agree.
people, we shall have many people to cancel. That the world is coming off. I don't want to
I
give
think,
hope
I think
that
it's better to look for next. I think it's better to
You know, pardon, why,
to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
you have to leave. When you close the door, must have leave event. You cannot close everywhere, and the whole thing will go off.
No, I agree with the extreme position, mainly because of one reason. When the crisis had just started, we were so keen on the issue of deferment of payment, because we were thinking that this will be 1-2 months and we'll resume business. But for the hospitality sector and tourism, basically, now we are talking about maybe even up to September or even beyond September, they will not be able to resume. Now, if you make them accumulate liability in the name of deferment up to September, where will they get the money? They will need money to restart their businesses, and then they will have this additional government debt to pay. It will be very difficult for them. So I think the discussion we should be having now are waivers, not just deferring payment, because you don't take away the obligation.
So the waivers, for example, of the statutory obligations like pay as you earn and all VAT and all this kind of stuff, is that enough to help? Aren't we likely to be asking for some kind of a bailout of some of these businesses?
Yes.
Can the government...
Of course, what Douglas were missing, when you are starting to think about something, you don't go to the last end of it. You start with the waiving in the first. You must start with the deferring.
That's what we have been talking
It's a
about.
process. Now, when we get there in September and we see the situation is still becoming more and more elastic, it's maybe you say, no, I think we need now a waiver. But if we start with waiving, you start definitely that's the extreme we're talking about.
You know, Peter, as a businessman, you need some level of predictability, especially where cash flow is involved. You need some level of planning. For instance, the Great Lakes Safari, I appreciate the wonderful work they're doing, paying workers. But if they are uncertain, if they think these liabilities will stay, then perhaps they will make certain decisions now that they may not make if they were already aware.
Okay.
They might lay off workers. But if they know that up to September will not be paying any taxes at all, perhaps they will keep these workers. So it affects your decision. That's why you don't have to wait until the end, but be able to plan with the right level of information.
So how do we continue working, employers going into all these factories, offices like these, amid the pandemic, where disease we're battling is highly transmissible? It can affect, corona anywhere is corona everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you can, if you get a case in Nakasero village, where we are right here, Nakasero Hill, it is possible in the next maybe 1 week that one case could have produced 300. How do we continue working amidst the pandemic? And do you see the discipline of Ugandan people?
I think what happens is we just simply continue to talk about the issue of sanitization, guidelines, as emphasis, as part and parcel of ourselves. I am aware we may not totally wipe it away, but we need to do that emphasis. Already, we are about 60%. I mean, you go to a market, you see somebody's washing, you get out, you get somebody's doing. So if we continue with that.
Though sometimes I can imagine and appreciate the effort in the market where they provide a drum of water there, and maybe there's a tap and then there's some piece of soap there. I look at it sometimes, I move with my own sanitizer in my pocket, because that thing itself looks like a corona dispenser.
Sure.
Really, because you'll see the thing is so dirty.
But the guidelines,
I appreciate the effort, but I'm thinking,
they say as long as you wash in about 5 or 10 seconds, you will have reduced 1 or 3 germs.
but when you're going to close. The other day, I washed using that mechanism. And I'm thinking now, how do I close? So I was trying to use my elbow to close. The whole drum almost fell down because so it has a challenge, even though it's a good effort.
So what I can say from the side of the Federation, What we did at the beginning initially was to develop a guideline, basically a step-by-step guide of what you could do for your workplace. Now, coming post-COVID or even during this period, first we have developed a basic checklist, safety and health at the workplace. So a simple checklist which you can follow, especially for the established businesses. The first one is your business registered? Just the workplace alone. Has there been any basic inspection done? Secondly, do you have even just a visitor's book? When we were entering here, we had to register. It's important for contact tracing. So these basic things we have done, just a very simple checklist which you could use. Then secondly, should everybody come back to office? During this period, we have perhaps realized that some people don't necessarily have to come to office to be able to deliver. For instance, in your case here, do your social media team have to be based here right in the office?
It is actually very different now. When you enter the office, there are very, very few people.
Exactly. So
that's across the board of Nation Media Group in Uganda.
Exactly.
You find the newsrooms, just a few people, and others who are working from home.
Yeah, so the working modalities. So maybe you don't need everybody to be here. And then also rework around the issue of managing generally your organization. I'll give you a very simple process that I usually tell most business people. There's a simple model called ERIC. You just simply ask ERIC. So at your workplace, what are the things you need to eliminate? And you can do a simple exercise with your employees. ERIC, the E is eliminate. So what are the things at your workplace that you need to eliminate? You don't need them at all. During this corona, you have realized you are just wasting money.
In that kind of thing is very dangerous because even individuals can be eliminated. But
there's a possibility. Then
I can see people going for individuals. Okay.
Yes, the R is reduce. Yeah, there are certain business lines we have now realized is not very productive. So we reduce, and then maybe concentrate on what are essential, the things that will get us
elimination,
more
individual, reduce individuals. Okay.
Not individual necessarily. Then the other is increase. So there are particular things that we have to be doing more of. We have not been doing them in the past. We need to increase. And then, of course, the last C is create. What are the innovations?
Cut costs.
No, it's not just about cost cutting, but it's about being realistic. And let me tell you, reducing the number of staff is unfortunate, I agree, it's a challenge. But if reducing the number of staff allows the company to continue and more people still remain in employment, I think it's a pain we should be willing to take.
But on the direction you are taking, making people work from home, Zooming, whatever would be, I think there are other things we need to continue looking at, because a home is not a workplace. If one guy who has been on a laptop falls down, will you compensate because he's working home? You don't have to look at this new thinking of the employer.
I want to put it like this. I want to put it like this, because when I'm working from home, Douglas, it means my home, my sitting room or my study room has become my office.
Yeah, it's possible.
I just want to know whether the employer is going to pay that space.
No.
And when I'm working from home, that means you're not meeting the costs of overhead, the water, the electricity and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm using them there while I'm executing your work. So I will need you to pay me for the office space that has become my home. I will want you to pay me for the water, for the electricity that I'm using at home. So are you the employers ready to increase and pay that? Because honestly, what should have been an office space, you're now getting it for free. And it's from my home. So pay for it.
Now, you raise a very important issue, Patrick. At the moment, within our labor laws, for instance, this was not anticipated at all. And Peter is absolutely right. A home has never been defined as a workplace. But in the circumstance that we are in an economy we are calling the gig economy, basically a gig here and there. But so that means you have to renegotiate. And this is the point why we are here with Peter. Needs that these contracts have to be renegotiated. So together with your employer, you have to engage. Even the way, the measurement of productivity has to be renegotiated. So the issue of compensation has to be discussed afresh and agreed. And then those terms of employment will change. So that is up to individual employers. Some employers may not even be able to do this. For instance, if you're a factory and somebody is a shop floor guy, he cannot operate from home. He has to be right there running the machine. So it will not apply to everybody. But whoever it will apply to, it will involve renegotiating contracts. So that's a different
Christopher, maybe this issue in the pandemic that we are learning is that people can still deliver from home. You don't have to come to office. And there has been a research, I think, done by World Bank that we lose in Uganda and maybe Kampala about 950 billion Uganda shillings a year because of the time we waste in the traffic jam and stuff like that. And probably that's the kind of money that can be saved. And now people are beginning to learn that you actually don't even have these meetings in a hotel or whatever, because now with Zoom technology, people can Zoom in and have their discussion. I can see my friends and colleagues in Fort Portal have been having their Zoom meetings in preparation for Fort Portal Tourism City. And for the last 1 month, every Thursday, people meet and chat and talk and plan for their city. It's really working pretty well, and ideas are coming. So how do we enhance this, and maybe government also investing more into the ICTs so that that becomes the norm?
You see, Patrick, the problem is people have not understood that Zoom is somebody who controls, not ourselves. You are not aware that your information is being sold away from what you are supposed to be doing in your business. So I wouldn't think Zoom is the direction one would be thinking about talking in terms of business, because it can lead you to winding up. Because your secrets, which you are planning on Zoom, somebody else is the one holding.
But Christopher, don't take that route, Christopher, so because everything you have is actually not yours.
And you talked about extremists.
No,
you need to start thinking. You have to still thinking like that.
Yes,
and then you.
But if you take that analogy, that means we cannot even do business because all the tools we have are not our tools.
Otherwise, you would have told me to Zoom from home. Why did you ask me to come here and we'll have this special discussion? It's just that because people wanted to get impressed, the audience who are there looking at you are different from how you are Zooming yourself. So that's one aspect which I wanted to draw to you, that I've not said Zoom is not bad, but look at it, at what level are we going to use Zoom? At corporate level, at small level, at what level?
But okay, for example, the heads of state in the East African region and the ministers in this pandemic have been able to meet, agree on many things using teleconferencing. So that's one thing, and I'm sure when you do that, they have saved money. You know, President Museveni and his colleagues in the partner states of the East African community have met more than once in having their summit on East Summit, and they have agreed, and it has come out well, and what they have agreed on has been applied. Imagine if the heads of state were to fly with their security, with everybody, the kind of money that would have been what? Because we cannot say we are not going to use some of these platforms because we don't control the platforms. Let me conclude it, because we don't control the platforms. Even the phones that we have, we don't control them. Even the emails that we send, we don't control them. If the computers we're using are not ours, if people put in their backward, the back door to listen to us, they would do. Can you imagine if you went on Kampala Road today on a busy day and tell people walking there that each one of you who does not have a garment that is made in Uganda, please put it here? What would happen? If you told the people on the streets of Kampala that if you are putting on a cloth that is not made in Uganda, put it here, do you know what you would see? A sea of nakedness, because we are not producing anything on our own.
You know, Patrick, you have brought that thing very well, and the budget is not very far. That's just next week. I wish these three countries are going to tell us how much they have really saved in this non-travel, in this 90 days of non-travel. Do you think these governments are going to declare money that this is what I've saved for my nation, my citizens? That's not the story. That's just an imaginary story. But
I thought the money that's been saved on seminars and workshops and travel and all
I would be happy.
It's the money.
I would be happy.
It's the money we can have, and then we say, you know what? You know what? You don't bring payee, don't bring all these things. I think that's the money.
I would be happy if Thursday we takes that direction. That's when I will believe that actually we've saved this money. But for me, I just raised it in terms of what level. If you are president, what level are you talking about? Douglas, you know very well the kind of sugarcane cutters we're having, the kind of machine people were running with. And do you want to tell your people? It's not always virtue that will take us to that. The other point which I should not forget was about working from home, which I said, yes, you raised the point that are you going to pay those people well? But Douglas thinking about reducing people. He wants to reduce, but he will not. He doesn't want to look at the pay rise. So in between, we need to do these safeguards so that we see how to move on. Of course, Zoom did not start today. Zoom has been there. But still, these presidents have been traveling. I would imagine where the Zoom started in Washington.
No. The issue is, some of these things cannot be totally be replaced. But maybe you have to appreciate that the pandemic has shown that there are things we can actually achieve without necessarily having physical interaction. That you can be somewhere else and some things will be done. They may not be done to the best result that you want, but as the technology is being worked on and improved upon, after all, that's where we seem to be headed, some of these things will change. We have had in the United States, some organizations have said, you'll work from home for a year. I'm sure you've had. Don't have to come back office. Go at home. For a year, you'll be working from home because their technology has been improved, and after all, they are into the the kind of information business, and that is possible. But we have learned some lessons. There are things you can do using technology that you do not sometimes have to travel. If you wanted to meet as CEOs of, let's say, banks, or maybe the Employers Federation, why should those employers go and pay money and go in a hotel?
We are doing webinars now.
Yeah, you just have to do your webinar. And maybe these things are going to be increased, because if you travel there, you're going to get into a jam, and the others get caught up caught in a jam. We will not meet at the same time. Others will come 30 minutes late because they're giving excuses. But if you say at 1300 hours, we're going to meet and have a webinar, everybody will be there. And if the technology is improved, you will hear and see them, even have that chemistry because you are able to see the person you're talking to. So perhaps that is, in my view, is unstoppable.
I agree. What Peter raises,
Christopher.
Christopher, yes, it's understandable, but it's a question of risk mitigation. So if you're going to shift to online operation, it's a matter of having new policies in place, having new guidelines in place, having issues of confidentiality. It's already in place now. There are organizations where you don't use a private email. Any official business is strictly done on the company platform. You can't do it anywhere else. So it's an issue of risk mitigation. And then also addressing certain health and safety issues, like mental health, for instance. It's different when you're in a workplace with colleagues. You have some level of interaction, you can gain some level of mental relief, which is not achievable if you're working on your own isolated.
And may I tell you, for example, I can use the newsroom here, for example, even if before we come to the show, I can just throw a question into the entire newsroom and then ask them, and the kind of information that you'll get from people, different views, you'll be amazed. And because of information moves within, because people are there, they can make me better because they are around. So I'll bounce off ideas from them, throw a question to them, and I get something, and then I get to learn from them. That becomes part of my research. Because you have talked to somebody.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have them, you're not better.
So we will just need to have the right policies in place and the right mechanism to manage this. But technology is here to stay. We are basically not turning back anymore. So even right now, as we talk, cups are printed. A glass like this now is printed like paper.
Yes.
3D printers, they print glasses. But previously that wasn't possible. So with where technology is heading, we need to catch up. There's no two way.
So now in this pandemic, Douglas, are you finding a lot of maybe court cases, legal challenges where employees are taking the employers to court and stuff like that? Are you getting those challenges because of matters of pay?
Not at the moment, maybe because of the way the court has been operating, but I foresee a lot of it coming. And that's why we have been advising employers a lot to follow due process, to comply with the labor laws, because as people begin to experience a certain level of distress, they will start to seek for help. And that will be a danger for employers who are not following due process. So at the moment, you may not see much, but after some time, as the pressure continues to sink deeper, people will seek for relief.
How ready are you maybe to mitigate industry action, or even some people could just come and camp at the office and say, you know, there was a case where somebody came with the child and the wife and whatever, said, you feed them now. Here they are. I mean, how are you ready for things like that?
I think having our membership and the trade union, there's some bit of discipline that we cannot have this kind of unrest coming, because even when we had this pandemic, we have been engaging. We've not left, just sat back and watched how the situation has been. So we've been engaging, and I believe that we're going to do a wide engagement to continue making sure that we get back to normal. Because those misfortunes, there are a few employers, as I said, that who may want to, they will always be there. That's indiscipline, where someone says, because of COVID, I cannot do this, and yet we have not reached that kind of extreme. So the best thing is to continue engaging, and we see that we really get out of this. Of course, save for those who are in informal. We're talking about these ones in informal group. Of course, informal, you can see this still coming back to the road is still a hassle. So I think that's where the biggest challenge we have. And we know informal group is far bigger. It's over 12 million. And these are the people who have been depending on in and out. So once we also don't rush to catch up with them, the taxi people, the border, the market group, that's the real constraint which is going to think may be bad for people to come and demonstrate.
What I'm picking is that informal group about 12 million. So Douglas, there's a need to run our business in a formal way. There's a business to run. What are you doing as employers to ensure that at least the business run like they should be, like business incorporated, you know?
Yeah, what we have been doing is mainly trying to train the entrepreneurs to help them to appreciate the importance of formalizing your business. A lot of the things that they do is also born out of ignorance. They assume it's costly to be formal, but it's actually very costly to be informal because it's high risk. If you're formal, for instance, you can insure your property, you can insure your business. But if you're informal, somebody comes and robs you, end of story. You start from scratch. But if you're a formal business which is insured, the insurance will check what has happened, or your things have been burnt. They will just check what was burnt, and you'll get your compensation. Your business will continue to run. If you want to benefit from the money that the government will offer now, for instance at UDB, they will not give you to put it in your pocket that you have a business down in Chikubu. So you can't even have access to finance. The money you have to get, you have to borrow it informally, which is very high interest. And by the way, borrowing informally is much more expensive than borrowing from the bank. You borrow informally, you could be charged 10% per month.
But what are you talking? What is the percentage? What is the interest in the bank today?
The banks, it varies depending on which category you fall.
If it was
between
if it was 10%, that would be very good.
Where would it be?
I'm giving you just an example of how informality can be costly.
Yes, but because when you say that, you introduced another idea to me that look, one of the bottlenecks we have is the cost of doing business, the cost of money.
It's true.
You go and get a loan.
Yeah,
who's going to make profit on the kind of loans that we're taking with such interest rates?
Yeah,
who can make it, if you're into production, who makes profit with the kind of electricity tariffs that we have? Who makes it profit with the kind of corrupt environment that we're working in?
I agree. And with the element of corruption, I think in a way the president has thrown it in our court to try and provide suggestions of how corruption could be controlled. One of the easiest which we have proposed to them, if we go e-government, the easier for us. If we limit physical interactions during processes, whether I'm applying for allowances or whatever I'm doing, then perhaps corruption will be less. But also the other is reporting corruption. Because in a way, we are complicit when we don't report corruption or when we praise the corrupt actually. So corruption is something we can address, and hopefully our businesses can also appreciate the importance of formality.
You know, Christopher, many people have lauded Uganda and Ugandans, to be exact, because of our entrepreneurial spirit, and that Ugandans start businesses, they're so enterprising, but unfortunately they also have a high mortality rate. These businesses do not survive to celebrate their first anniversary. So what do we need to do so that I could be working here and tomorrow I decide to go and start a business, and you know, looks so well at the beginning, the concept paper is good, the business idea is bankable, but before you know it, it's going to break?
I think people are applauding Ugandans because we quickly embraced the issue of liberalized economy. People didn't wait. And I think through that, people started learning from those risks. So in between, we've been in it for some time. And I think this is where the issue comes. So we need to be prepared. How do we make our business much better? So we've now learned how to transit in the liberalized economy. But out there now, what do we need? We need somebody to help us how to strengthen ourselves to do it the way how you said the Indians are doing it. But we have
organizations like Private Sector Foundation Uganda that are supposed, you know, they give money, but also some kind of training on how to start a business. I think things like these need to be enhanced because they have a very good start, that you have Ugandan people with the entrepreneurship kind of spirit and their work ethos up there. Sometimes about to know how to put things right, and then so that your money can work for you.
I agree, and that's what I was just explaining. I just explained it a bit. We train entrepreneurs, and we train them at 3 different levels. The first level is you just want to generate a business idea. How do you start? You have got some money from whatever source, but you want to start a business. So we train you how to generate a business idea. For some people, they already have a concrete business idea. We train you how do you start your business, the registration processes, the licenses required, the partnership that you may need, the sources of funding, and then, of course, those who are already in operation. How can you continue to run your business in a sustainable manner? We do that at the Federation, and with the help of the International Labour Organization, we've actually been doing it free of charge.
Okay, our time is almost out, gentlemen. Let me ask you, Christopher, to make your concluding remark on the short-term this evening.
What I want to say in the issue of COVID, maybe there's one which we did not mention, was about the excitement of NSSF money. Why they're not giving us 20%? It was just about legislation, which the Parliament has now debated. We are not very far away from it. So I would like to give hope that the issue of midterm access is going to be availed. Of course, this will be continuous.
But if that is the true, I'm sorry to distract you, do they even have that money, that liquidity?
Of course, when you talk about midterm access, it may not be an omnibus. Because you see, why am I saying this? Kamari could have worked for 1 or 2, 3 years. How much saving is that? That's very small. We're talking about people who have hit 10 years on, having bigger responsibilities. You know, when it comes in that kind of form, definitely you need to be cautioned.
Okay.
So in that kind of line, you'll find that you need that kind of help. Of course, the other point of emphasis is my members who have learned, I've been telling people, when you are together, you will always work out a way out. Asking workers who are out there, get into the trade union.
Okay.
So that we are able to work things as a team. You will not get these shocks if you are not, if you are out there, shocks will be heavy. But if we are together, you will be able to minimize these shocks. That's the kind of message.
Thank you. Douglas, your parting shot?
Yeah, for me, for the employers out there, first I want to encourage you to have a business continuity plan in place. And as we prepare also to resume work, now that public transport is open, I would also want to encourage you to have a basic checklist, basically for safety and health at your workplace. Consider the guidelines which has been issued by the Ministry of Health, and then also see which staff you actually need within your premises, or you can
Okay.
allow others to continue.
Thank you very much. Douglas, thank you very much. Thank you, Christoph, and thank you all of you for watching this. I know Douglas said, let us have business continuity plan so that we can know maybe we can continue if we meet some shocks. And maybe COVID-19 has been our shock therapy. Uganda, we've been there. We've been hit hard in the past by a tumultuous past, and we have always prevailed. And I think even now, this time around, we shall prevail. Good evening, and God bless Uganda.